So thank you again for being here for our final session, Sustain and Transition, Building Momentum Beyond BHSSA. So today is more than just a closeout. It's really an honor. It's really a moment just to honor the impact that you've all created in your journey, all the lives that you've touched and the systems that you've strengthened throughout your experience, right? Even though you're not sunsetting until the next year or so, you've created such beautiful and powerful practices and programs within your communities. And so this last session is really about carrying that momentum with intention, identifying what must be sustained, what can be evolved, and also all the new possibilities that are emerging because of all the different pieces that you've already implemented as well. Next, this is basically what over our past 3 sessions, we have moved throughout this particular journey. The first session, we've actually reflected on what we've learned in our BHSSA journey. And then we transition into lifting up powerful stories behind all of the work that you've done. And then today we're going to be exploring all of the impact beyond BHSSA. So each of these steps has uncovered many insights for us. We've celebrated all the progress and really strengthened the foundation that you've built. Tina's going to take us through a little bit of a deeper review of what we've uncovered for the past sessions, but this is what we're going to kind of focus on today's conversation. And we're also very excited to be sharing 2 powerful practices today. First, from our TCTs from Placer County, focusing on sustaining impact through the integration of ISF. And then later from our TCTs from Imperial County Office of Education, Sustainability, we're going to share their sustaining their teams during transition as well. And then from there, we're going to move into a whole group harvest where we're going to have an opportunity for us to discuss any kind of concerns, boundaries, intentions, and really any dreams beyond our BHSSA term. And then we're going to close out.
Thanks so much, Angela. So I'm excited to bring this back because a lot of you had questions about it after the session, and we just wanted to remind you. I know I am like an advertisement for the hub, but absolutely, if you missed the first or second session, all of those pieces, the tools, the resources, the recording, the slide deck are all available there, as well as the materials from today. So just know that. If you're joining us for all, or maybe this is your first session of this series, all of that material is available to you. One thing I want to remind, I'm not going to go too deep into the ego cycle. We've done this, but our goal or our hope is that it is something that you can take back to your team. Where we find ourselves in Sunset 3, in this place and discussion of the sunset, we're going to be talking a lot today. Not us per se, but you're going to hear stories about what sunset has been like for our 2 counties sharing their powerful practice share. There are going to be things where they're going to be talking a little bit about what's had to be let go. And perhaps we find ourselves in this place of creative destruction, right? Where I know the word destruction can sound kind of rough, but it is the place where we begin to prioritize what it is we want to continue and move forward with. It is the place where we move towards renewal, reorganization, coming back to our values, our vision for what can be for the future, to move towards this ongoing process, the eco cycle here. We move towards gestation, true visioning, true searching for how to sustain and begin anew and continue those pieces we really want to invest our time and effort and capacity into. So EcoCycle, for those of you who are seeing this for the first time, is really a way that we are able to assess where our projects, our programs, our services are in this moment, as well as not just in this moment, but past as well as future, and what is possible for that future. So it really is a nice way to help guide conversations with your team about what's getting us stuck, how do we move forward, what should we move forward with, and what do we need to do that, right? So a lot of different things considered there. So again, as you think about this in the back of your mind, perhaps you are in this space kind of on the bottom right creative destruction, renewal into gestation today. That's where we hope to move us all. In session two, we were really lucky to have, I'm going to keep clicking on this because I won't do the story justice, but Janelle and Sarah are here too. And what I'll share is, one of the wonderful things I got to hear about is when a team of one becomes a team of many, and the growth that's come from 2021 all the way to 2025, and what has essentially been their story. They're here too. You also have the recording available. But one of the things that they really did touch upon, and they talked about this similarly in our BHSSA grantee meeting, is really the power of story and sharing the data, talking about it, making it a part of the culture. So we're really grateful to hear how they've really amplified that. Taken bright spots, which are the positive stories shared from team members. And feel free, Janelle and Sarah, if you need to correct me at any time to do that too. But to take those bright spots from team members, to keep talking about it, reporting it out in all those different ways from newsletters to board meetings to collaborative spaces with community partners to really get folks invested. And so all of those clicks is growth throughout the year. And this is where they find themselves with the School of Mental Health and Wellness department or division. So grateful for that. Again, look for that in the hub. And thank you for putting that in the chat. Link is there. I feel like folks who are here, maybe there are folks who will continue to join, but folks who are here, um, let's connect before we hear the story. And so one thing I'm going to ask you to do might be thinking about the eco cycle. But there are things or components of your BHSSA project or program right now that you want to make sure or you want to prioritize for the future, right? Maybe not all. Maybe it's the top thing on your list, but that's your BHSSA seed. So what I'm going to ask you to do, whether it's unmute or put in the chat, is answer the question, what BHSSA seeds do you want to plant for the future? What do you want to see continue? So we'll take a moment, go ahead and feel free to unmute or put in the chat. But what BHSSA seeds do you want to plant for the future? Thank you, Erin. Continued collaboration and coordination with project partners. Absolutely. One thing we know is it isn't just about the funding source, but it's connecting, right? So that we're open to possibility, partnerships for future, but continuing that, keeping those connections, creating meaningful networks. Absolutely. Some are easily recognizable or connectable, I guess, to our work, and some maybe are a little bit different than what we envisioned. But again, it's all about collaboration again. It's all about making sure that we are talking about all the wonderful things that are happening within our programs. So absolutely extending, maintaining, creating, in some cases, these networks, right? Um, so Kelly's saying, I really just facilitate reporting and liaison with our county office. Get it. But key components to continue are the collaborative and the peer work. Again, collaborative, really that sense and that spirit has come up 3 times. And the peer work, Youth Mental Health Development Academy and peer summits. A lot of the student to student supports, which looking at the folks who are on the line, many of you have those youth academies or youth advisory, or you're very much engaged with youth voice. So continuing that on, I think, is something that is on the minds and hearts of folks here, Kelly. So thank you. Stephanie says, empowering our youth and families through mental health stigma reduction and access to early intervention for our youth. We're not going to forget prevention and early intervention here, right? Or the campaigning or again, reducing stigma so that we can increase that help-seeking behavior. So thanks for that, Stephanie. So important for all. Okay. And with that, I will stop and invite our next speakers, which we're really excited to have Ali and Christina share their story in a little bit more depth, but how ISF has really supported their sunset as well as sustainability.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, everyone. We're excited to be here and share a little bit about a tool we're using in ISF. So my name is Ali Murphy, and I'm the Director of Mental Health at Placer County Office of Education. And have been working on BHSSA, MHSSA grants since 2019. So made a lot of mistakes and hit some bumps along the way. So excited to share a tool that we've found that's been really supportive of our grant process. And I'll let Christina introduce herself now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christina Trentz, also with Placer County Office of Education, and I'm a coordinator and a proud member of our mental health and wellness team and a proud colleague of Allie's, and I've learned so much from her.
Okay, well, we're going to get started. So some of the challenges that have sort of influenced what we're going to talk about today include the turnover and shifting priorities, and the challenge of the long-term impact, as well as evidence-based practices often fading without structured support, and systems integration being key to sustainment. So the tool that came out of the interconnected systems framework that we're going to talk about today has really impacted our ability to overcome those challenges, and we're excited to talk about it with you all. And a little history of our program that definitely impacted where we are today. So I just want to give you a little background here. In 2018, the commission funded 6 wellness centers in Placer County through the school triage grant, which some of you may know about. And at the time, we had some readiness requirements for districts, which included PBIS implementation and allowing our wellness staff, our therapists and liaisons to be on the PBIS team. And in 2019, we opened those wellness centers with a really big focus on building relationships and helping sites understand the integration of mental health in schools. But we were also still sort of discovering ourselves what that looked like on a day-to-day basis. We knew we wanted our staff to be on teams, on campus, so that students and families and staff didn't really know, is this a school hired staff or is this a county hired staff? It didn't really matter. We wanted them to be really integrated. And in 2020, we continue to focus on those relationships, but kind of upped the importance of the MTSS framework with a big focus on services offered at each tier and doing our best to create a referral process and a system that really emphasized where a student might need tier 1 support versus tier 2 or tier 3. But there was challenges along the way with that, including a need for more interventions that matched the needs we were seeing for students getting tier 2 and tier 3 services. So in the last couple of years, we really focused on student outcomes and training and implementing evidence-based practices. We really saw the need for that. And there'll be a few slides today where we'll talk a bit more about where the challenge was and how we were able to overcome that challenge. Okay, so if you haven't heard of the Interconnected Systems Framework, we talked about it a bit last, I can't remember if it was May or June, I think, at our BHSSA grantee meeting, but we know there's been a lot of meetings since then. So just a little recap on ISF. We can give you more info if you're interested. You're welcome to reach out to us. But there's 4 key messages in ISF. One being that there should be a single system of delivery. Instead of having multiple teams meeting to talk about students, you can combine your teams for efficiency. And more than that, because we know that when a student has, let's say, an attendance need, there might also be a mental health need, or the academics might be impacted. So combining those teams help you to serve students better. It also believes that access is not enough. We need intentional integration for generalization. So schools are a great place to provide these services because students can practice the skill, let's say with a school counselor, and then go implement that skill out on the playground or in the classroom. And so it's not just enough to give the students a service, but we need to make sure that those skills are being generalized. And then mental health is for all. So one of the key messages is a focus on the well-being of students and staff. I would also probably include families in there as well. And then last is that MTSS is essential. So there needs to be some implementation of evidence-based practices across all tiers. That can be an evidence-based reading intervention, an evidence-based SEL curriculum, and it can also be evidence-based tier 3 interventions. We're going to talk a little bit about all of those today. Okay, so we're going to talk about a shift that really happened for us that was very helpful. And And before working here, I worked in community mental health and worked at the county, had a good understanding of mental health services, but learning how to put those in a system and learning how to make data-based decisions was something that we've had to learn over time. And this was a really big aha moment. So historically, when we provided services, let's think specifically at schools. What happens is there's a need that pops up. And if schools have a decent system in place, and there might be a referral system where a teacher says, this student is struggling in my classroom, they have this need. And then they might get matched to a service provider, a clinician, a community-based organization, a school counselor, and then the service provider decides on that intervention. It can be based on what that service provider has expertise in. It can be, something that they're kind of coming up with in the moment based on the need of the student, but they really determine that based on their own training and experience and what they're able to provide. This sort of new way of thinking that comes from ISF is that a student presents with a need, and then we choose an intervention based on that need. And then the service provider who's trained in that intervention can provide it. So see, the shift here is we're focusing more on the intervention first and then choosing the provider versus the provider choosing the intervention. So let's see what that looks like in an actual example. So historically, you might have a student who's having emotional regulation issues. They get matched with a school counselor, and the school counselor decides that she or he's going to run a regulation group. Okay, that's not bad, by the way. That's great. We love a group. We love students getting matched with a school counselor, but there is a better way to do it that supports good student outcomes and also helps with efficiency of our programs, which is that the student has an emotional regulation need. We know that zones of regulation is an evidence-based intervention for that concern. And then there's somebody on campus who's a zones of regulation facilitator, possibly the school counselor, possibly the community-based organization that's embedded at the school. So this is an example of how you might see that shift here.
Okay.
Right.
And over to me. Thank you, Allie. So now that we've shifted our mindsets a little bit, and this really was a big aha for our programs and moving away from that lens of focusing on the person rather than the intervention. And again, our people are magic, right? They are the secret sauce that makes all of our interventions successful and possible. But we still need to focus on those evidence-based interventions. So once we've opened our mind to focusing on the intervention, the next step is to really question, okay, how do we know that we are providing those interventions in the ways that were intended with fidelity and if they're having an impact? So how do we know that we are doing those things well? So that's what then led us to practice profiles. And this is really our powerful practice share for today and has been a game changer in creating sustainable interventions that can carry on beyond us sunsetting through BHSSA. So what are practice profiles? Practice profiles are really implementation tools, essentially a document that outlines the what of a program, practice, or intervention. So what is this thing that we are providing to our students in our community that's having an impact? And it outlines a brief description of what that is, what are the essential steps that are involved in providing that practice or intervention, what are our fidelity measures, and what are our outcome measures. So we can think about this sort of like a recipe card. And as we're approaching Thanksgiving, many of you might have some recipes that you're pulling out of your little recipe card box if you have an old school box like I do at home. And you need that card to really tell you what are those essential steps so that I can make this meal that I'm really wanting to make for my family. And same thing when we're providing a quality intervention, there's a series of ingredients and a series of steps that we need to follow. And the great thing about having that recipe card is that anyone can pick it up. So even as our landscape changes, our staffing changes, or if we're transitioning from our county providers working on our school campuses to maybe district providers now providing those services, they can pick up those best practice recipe cards and carry those things forward. So the beauty of this, and this is a goal of anything that we're implementing on our school campuses or through our programs, is that what we are implementing is teachable, learnable, doable, and repeatable. And that truly is what these practice profiles provide. And we'll get into the details of what those can look like. And when we create things that are teachable, learnable, doable, and repeatable, we create sustainability. So just like I described, we can pick up that recipe card, that practice profile, and that can be transferred on to the next person, whoever that might be, as staff turns over. It also empowers leaders and supervisors to be able to lean into that practice profile to train others, build the capacity of others, and progress monitor over time. So what does a practice profile involve? So here are some of the key pieces of what a practice profile look like. So it starts with a brief description of what is that thing. So Ali was talking about zones of regulation. So that might be a thing that we're providing. So a brief description of what the intervention or practice is. And then consideration. So when might this practice or intervention be indicated? Under what circumstances? Who is it intended for? And then what are some of those nuances? So there might be some data decision rules attached to this that would tell us, oh, when we're looking at this data, this would tell us that this is the right intervention versus where is that threshold that might tell us it's time to consider something else. And then the steps, the true recipe involved in this. What are the key steps involved in this intervention that are going to lead us to success? So how will we know that we're doing it well if we're following those key steps in the process? We're not going to get very far on creating our recipe and following through with that if we're not following the steps. You can't just have the ingredients and poof, you have your meal, but you have to follow those steps that are in place. And then our fidelity measure. So how do we know that we're doing it well? And on our practice profile, that lists out what are those fidelity measures? Do we have some tools in place to know if we're doing this the right way? And a missing bullet point on here as well are the outcome measures. So that's another piece that the practice profile will outline for us. So how do we know that we had the intended impact? What are our outcome measures? So here's a simplified, it can be as simple as this. It's just a document that outlines all of those sections that we just talked about, that brief description, considerations for use, the steps or critical features, what types of fidelity measures are we looking at, and then what are our outcome measures aligned with that practice or intervention. And again, the beauty of this is that we create that consistency and clarity for everyone who might be providing or implementing this intervention. And for us, that meant across all of our sites, because we had many different wellness centers embedded within different districts across different school sites with many different staff members. So our practice profiles ensured that clarity and consistency of the work that we're doing so that there weren't questions. It wasn't that one staff member was implementing zones of regulation this way with their secret sauce and someone else was implementing it this way with their secret sauce, but we have that transparency and that consistency across the program so that we can be assured that we're doing it well. But there was also transparency for our district staff, our teachers, our families, so they have a clear understanding of what this is and what we're providing on school campuses. Okay, so when we think of practice profiles, it's important to understand what they are intended for, but also maybe what they're not intended for as well. So practice profiles can do a lot for us. They can define those acceptable and unacceptable ways of use because we have those clear steps. We have the considerations to know who is the right population and under what circumstances. They do provide us with enough detail for training. So if you're in a supervisory position, you can use that practice profile to help support the training of others or of new staff. And it's really important to understand that these are ongoing. So we change the practice profiles as needed based on the changing landscape and the context of our situation where we are providing those interventions. So we collaboratively tweak those practice profiles to fit the need and fit the context. And as we learn more, so our staff that are providing services on school campuses, they give us the most insight because they're there in it every day. so they can provide us with the most crucial information to know how we might need to change that practice profile to make it the most usable. So we edit it over time. What it does not do. So it is not a script. So it is not going to tell us exactly how to implement that intervention. It's definitely not going to take the place of clinical judgment. Just like when we follow a recipe card, we're going to add our own special nuances to that. It might not outline in the recipe that when I'm making my lasagna, I'm going to turn on the broiler for the last couple of minutes to get the cheese all bubbly and brown, but that's a piece of that clinical judgment. So we're always going to add that there, and that might not be in the practice profile, and that's okay. And it's also not a fidelity tool in and of itself. It's going to tell us what tools to look to measure fidelity, but the practice profile is not that tool in and of itself. And it's definitely not a replacement for the intervention. It is just a tool to support the implementation of that intervention and the sustainment of it over time. So our practice profiles have become very, very supportive of staff because it does provide them with that anchor. We have this document that really tells staff, what does this need to look like? What is the intent? What are the steps to follow? But also allows for that flexibility and that clinical judgment that I was just speaking to. And it also supports us in supervisory positions to be able to lean into that practice profile and to collect data to see if we are adhering to the practice profiles as intended. So it's assurance that we are doing this well, and here's our proof in the pudding. As an example, we wanted to share about our wellness breaks. So as Ali shared, we have many different wellness centers throughout Placer County, and we provide services across all tiers. So an essential tier 1 support that was offered to students throughout campuses are wellness breaks. So our wellness centers are accessible to all and aligned with ISF, mental health is for all. So we want to make this available, and our centers are a resource for students when they need it. So the goal was to implement wellness breaks. What this looks like is it's a brief support that's offered to students. It provides that several minutes for self-regulation or co-regulation, dependent upon the needs of the students when they visit the wellness center. And the student spends some time in the wellness center and then is able to return to class in a more regulated state to allow them to learn. So this is at a tier 1, and it's available to all students on campus. So this was something that was in place across all sites. Now, in early implementation stages, we experienced some challenges with this. So we had to work out some tweaks. So part of the challenges were that we were lacking a firm structure. So how one site was implementing wellness breaks was very different from how another site was implementing wellness breaks. There also may not have been clear communication about the intent of wellness breaks, when they should be used, for how long students should spend in the wellness center when they're coming out for a break. Did we have a break pass when students were coming out to come and visit us or not? And then when there is that confusion, that's when misconceptions can arise. So then school staff on campuses or others that are involved in our systems might question, what is the purpose of this? Are they just escaping class? What's going on? What exactly are you providing? So that's when a practice profile really became an essential piece for us. It helped us to then create that clear structure across our program, helped provide that clarity for staff of what this is, the intended use, and also to be able to clearly share that information with others so they understood the purpose of it, that this is an evidence-based practice that we're utilizing, and here is how it's intended to be used. So here's an example of what our completed wellness break practice profile looked like. So that involved our brief description of what it was, and we put some checks and balances in place around those considerations for use and established some data decision rules around that as well. So we wanted to have an idea of how long students should spend when they take a wellness break. What is the difference between a co-regulation break versus a self-regulation break? We wanted to ensure that students are signing in so that we as coordinators can be tracking the data to know who is visiting and how often, and then empower us with that information to know when it's time to take a step up, If a student has visited us 6 times in that month for a wellness break, this might be a consideration now that they might need a tier 2 level of support or service. So we'll then bring that to our intervention team. And Allie's going to talk a little bit more about coordinator reports and how that data is gathered on our teams as well. And you can see we outlined our fidelity measures and our outcome measures here too. So as I just mentioned, a key piece in practice profiles is that it empowers us to monitor fidelity on an ongoing basis and also to progress monitor and bring that information to our teams. And we use the team-initiated problem-solving process and agenda, the TIPS process, through ISF, and as PBIS has been our foundation at most of our wellness sites. And then we're better able to progress monitor as supervisors and then know when it's the time to take the next step. And I'm going to hand it back over to Allie to share about those coordinator reports.
Thanks, Christina. Beautiful job explaining practice profiles. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use this data. I don't know about you all, but when I was becoming a therapist, I definitely did not think about spending time collecting data and using that to inform decisions. And I think it took me a little while to understand the importance of that. And now it is really exciting to me when we can look at this data and use it to support students and also to support our programs. So hopefully I'll give you a little snapshot of that here. So like Christina said, we have students sign in every time they come for a wellness break. And so it's really, really helpful for multiple reasons, but one is for the data collection. And so every month what we do is we look at each site and how many wellness breaks there have been total. So just how many breaks were there total. And then by student, we look at that as well. And so we look at the high pattern usage. So students with 6 or more breaks. And this is a really big piece of sustainability. What that's helped us to do is to consider that student for a possible tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. Clinical judgment is still really important here. We'll talk with our teams and they may say, this student has an IEP where breaks are written into that. That's all the service they need right now. Or this student has outside counseling and they just use this as an opportunity to practice the skills they're learning there. That's great. But most of the time what we're seeing is when a student has that many breaks in a month, the team does think it's a good opportunity to refer the student to the tier 2, tier 3 team and talk about the need with the rest of the team and problem solve around that. And so we will send our staff, here's a list of your students who had 6 or more breaks this month, and they'll report back on what they're getting or if they think they need a referral. And oftentimes that leads to them being entered into a group or entered into individual services, whether that's skills-based work or individual counseling with one of our evidence-based practices. And so in that way, it's really helped with sustainability because we're identifying quicker students that might need a service that we can then bill to the fee schedule. And also just ensuring that student is really getting the service that they need. The other thing that we use this for is even if let's say a clinician says, the student doesn't really need a tier 2, tier 3 service. I have a pretty good clinical read on that. We'll still ask them if they've talked with the student's parent about them coming into the wellness center on a regular basis, because even though all students can access this, when someone's coming in on a regular basis, we just want to make sure we're doing that good home to school connection so that we're on the same page with the family and make sure that if there's other needs that we're supporting them. Okay. So all of this definitely is in a continuous improvement cycle. So just to kind of recap what our process looks like here. So we define our practices through practice profiles. And you may be thinking, okay, but we don't really have all these EBPs at our sites. Those are really expensive to train and do consultation on. Hopefully you saw that with the wellness breaks, you can still use a practice profile. And in fact, with something like a wellness break, which has some evidence-based elements in it based on how long a student takes a break and what they do there, that's an even better reason sometimes I think to use a practice profile, because you want to have those clear boundaries around how those promising practices or evidence-based-ish practices are being used, so they're really being done well and that you have a good read on how they're being done in your program. So we develop them, we train and coach our staff on them, and then we collect the outcome and fidelity data like we just talked about with our coordinator reports, and then reflect and adjust support as needed. So we had a staff recently who said that there was a student who was coming and using breaks and they felt like it didn't really fit the pattern of what was in the practice profile, and they thought they might need more breaks a month, and would that be okay? And so they talked through that with their supervisor. And again, clinical judgment trumps everything, but it's a great tool in supervision to talk about that. And sometimes it even does lead us to making adjustments in the practice profile. Like Christina said, this is a ongoing editable document. It's not something that once you build it, you can't make adjustments to it. All right. So again, the coordinator reports help us maintain practice consistency despite any funding and staff changes. I love the way Christina highlighted that. And then supports ongoing capacity building and professional development, and embeds fidelity and outcome monitoring in data systems. I don't know about you all, but for our program, as these grants are ending, districts and school boards are really asking for evidence of how these interventions are working. Are these going to be interventions or programs that they want to continue with the tighter funds that they may have? And having this data is really helpful to be able to do that. Okay, so just briefly, you can ask out if you have questions or comments, or you can also share in the chat one thing that's resonating with you, or one thing that you're wondering, or how you could see practice profiles being used to sustain the impact of your BHSSA work. So if everybody would just, you can choose one of those, and if you want to share out or drop in the chat, we'll give everybody a minute to do that. I'm seeing in the chat comments about the simplicity and ease of use and easy to follow and a place to formalize structures. I think too, not every program, clinical supervision might look different. We're really lucky in Placer to have licensed MFTs and social workers who supervise our team. But if you're in a position where maybe your school's counselors are being supervised by your principal, or you more of like a PLC model, practice profiles can still be a tool that's used to coach and support, and can make it easier for different types of roles to do that supervision, even if you're not necessarily trained or certified in that EBP. Christina, anything else you want to add?
No, I think, yeah, just the emphasis on the flexibility of this. And regardless of how your program might be changing, really think about the great things that you're doing. And if you haven't documented that in some way, think about a practice profile, think about how you can document and systematize what it is that's been put in place, so that regardless of what happens next, those things can still be able to benefit the children and families that we have been supporting.
And last thing I'll just say is, I think this is a place that AI can be really helpful, is if you draft one, especially if you have a clear EBP, like we're doing TFCBT, ChatGPT might know enough about TFCBT just to kind of look that over for you before you give it to real people doing the intervention to look it over as well. But it's a great editing thought partner tool there.
We're gonna now connect it to our next TCT presenter. I'm going to kick it off to Miriam and Stephanie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation, Christina and Ali. As usual, that was great. Thank you so much. Bravo, bravo. So we are Miriam Belopolsky, or Bell, Imperial County Office of Education, my partner, Stephanie Ramirez. We are TCT leads for sustainability, but we were asked to share our story. We're obviously a BHSSA grantee. And so several weeks back, you heard our partners, Denise Cavani and Irene, share the Imperial County story, and they really gave a good depth and breadth of our journey, of our story. So what we decided that we were going to pick it up where Denise and Irene left off, and we'll share our journey, where we were, where we are now, where we're going, and a success story. And we're going to try to do that in 15 to 20 minutes. And so where Denise left off, Tina, you be my guide. You keep my time. You keep our time.
Got it.
Where Denise and Irene left off was right here. She really left off right here at our consortium. Everything goes back to that's a live photo. We were established in 2021 and we were funded in 2021. We applied for 001. We weren't funded in 001, and for us that was turned out to be a blessing. We were funded as 002, and then so we became the Imperial County School-Based Mental Health Consortium. It's not ICOE Imperial County, it is Imperial County School-Based Mental Health Consortium. Uh, and we really formulated our partnership between behavioral health, Imperial County Behavioral Health Services, Imperial County Office of Education, and who you see there on the photo is Behavioral Health ICOE. You'll see Denise and myself, and our partners, our high school superintendents and district leaderships, our 8 partnering high schools. Next slide. So yeah, so where we were, what we were doing, well, all of this, what we're going to share, we're very aware that this is going to resonate with, everyone here. That's why we are BHSA grantees, 57 grantees. But what were we doing? What were we were working toward a common objective, as we all were, right? We really grounded ourselves in our mission that for all students to have equitable access to high quality mental health services, because we needed them and wanted them. Our vision was to become, of course, resilient, healthy members of our Imperial County community. We really grounded ourselves in our mission, and that was and still remains true today, to build a seamless continuum, a progression of high quality. We always emphasize high quality, tiered mental health services for our students of Imperial County and their families. Next slide. What were we doing? We were working toward achievable outcomes. We really broke down the grant and the grant document, and we beautified it, and we anchored our vision statement, our mission statement, our objectives, and we really honed down our project years. Our year 1, what were our focus tasks and deliverables for year 1? We really decided that we were going to focus on staff and students. Not that we didn't focus on the other areas, but year 1 was really about focusing on staff and students in this initiative. Year 2, we were going to then build in families, while maintaining services, of course, and the focus of staff and student, building students' capacity, building staff's capacity, bringing in families, and then year 4, focusing on community and partners and outreach. Not that that wasn't embedded throughout, but we decided that we really wanted to structure our grant document and beautify it so that it was a live document. It was actually a document that our team would want to point to and use and display to keep us focused on our outcomes. And we were fulfilling our purpose, as you all were as well. Our purpose was to provide all high school students. We chose high school in Imperial County. We wanted to provide, high quality, the emphasis again on high quality and timely, faster services, mental health services, all in the areas of all of the tiers: prevention, early intervention, and intervention, to address those behavioral health issues that can undermine their learning and health development. We wanted to expand, do better, providing mental health crisis services to high school students, because we felt that those areas were lacking students and their families, both on campuses and off campuses, and we needed strong partnerships. So it's all embedded and all intertwined. We needed strong partnerships in order to strengthen that area. We, of course, wanted to provide seamless transition and easier access to mental health services for our students and their families. Next slide. We also, we were fulfilling our purpose. we can all agree that we were all tasked with reducing mental health stigma, but that was really an important area. If we just did that alone, we would be achieving some good work. In 2020, 2019, 2021, mental health and mental health services and wellness and your mental really was not discussed in our high schools. It really was not normalized, and so that was a big deal for us to reduce mental health stigma within our schools and our community. We knew that we had to increase staff capacity and provide and skill them up and provide them professional learning opportunities because we relied on them. We needed them to help us address and support mental health needs of students and their own as well. And then the last thing that we were doing to fulfill our purpose was refining and expanding our partnership with our service sites. We decided it was going to be all of our high schools. We have 21 of them in all of our 8 partnering high school districts, as well as Imperial County Behavioral Health Services and ICOE. So that's where we were. Next slide. We were also, before we even launched staff and doing the work of our funding, Denise and I early on, even before we started launching staff, we were doing the work of defining our areas of service because we were going to bring in new staff through the BHSSA grant, new staff that our high schools had never received before. So it was important that Denise is the co-lead with myself on this grant. We took our talk on the road and we went superintendent to superintendent defining roles because we knew that there was a team of mental health professionals on campus, our school counselors, our school psychologists, our therapists that some schools had the luxury of having, but they were soon to be receiving a new role. And for us, they were called school-based mental health specialists. They are therapists on campus. So we spent a lot of time defining our areas of service and identifying the roles of these helping professionals. And we were finally able to employ our team. Through BHSSA funding, we were very excited to be funded for 5 FTE, school-based mental health specialists. I explained that these are therapists using BHSSA grant funding. That's what we received. That's what we had enough for. We had 5 FTE therapists that we could employ to bring on our team to provide these services. We decided that as I mentioned, that we would service all of our 8 Imperial County high schools, and that meant serving over 12,000 high school students. And that document that you see in front of you, that is the actual document that we use to break down these 5 FTEs throughout our high schools. So 1 FTE would be servicing 2 school districts comprising almost 2,300 students. Our second school-based mental health specialist would be serving 1 large school district, servicing over 3,100 students. Our third mental health specialist would be serving another large school district that enrolls over 4,000 students. And our 5th FTE school-based mental health specialist would have, our 4th FTE would have 2 small school districts, but where you see Imperial County Office of Education, 865 students, very high risk, very high need students. Our 5th one would have 2 school districts servicing over almost 1,600 students. So we were ready, right? This is what the superintendents knew that we had, and we were ready to move forward with employing our team, and we did. That's where we were. Stephanie, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to share what happened and where we are now.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, and now where we are now in our current state. So there was a lot of work being done in the beginning, a lot of building up, a lot of communication with our superintendents, our districts, and our partners with behavioral health. And we later moved in well, from the inception as well, there was the Imperial County School-Based Mental Health High School Consortium that was established. Denise Cabanilla and Irene Dry did mention this at the first sunsetting session. They spoke about how the partnership development started. And now we're in year 5. We are still going strong. So our Imperial County School-Based Mental Health High School Consortium continues to meet quarterly, so 4 times a year. The governing party here are all our stakeholders. So that consists of our district leads or superintendents that represent our high school districts. So that Miriam mentioned that there's 8 high school districts that represent 21 of our high schools. And we all meet to discuss the vision, the services, and the sustainability planning for our school-based mental health programs. And in addition to that, we have our partners with behavioral health that are in attendance. And as well, we are starting to now invite, and they're part of our consortium, Child and Family Services are also part of our team. And once a year, we have a super consortium where we invite superintendents and district leads for our elementary middle school districts. And so we are all able to discuss school-based mental health services as a whole, as a county, and where we want our services to go and support our Imperial County communities. And where we are now. So our growing team has been growing. Mary mentioned and gave some numbers on the first 5 school-based mental health specialists that were funded solely through BHSSA funds. And we definitely started thinking, because we were outnumbered. Our specialists, our therapists, definitely didn't had a great task ahead of them. They were given schools and they're outnumbered by the thousands. And so one of the things that was discussed early on within the consortium was that this was not enough. 5 school-based mental health specialists was not enough. Yes, they were important, they were vital. However, we needed more. And so districts early on saw the value. Our partners saw the value in having school-based mental health specialists on the ground and on school sites. And one of the things that was just amazing was the first year when we launched, we had 5, and ending that first year, grant year 1, January 2022 to June 2022, we added 5 additional school-based mental health specialists with blended funding. So 5 were solely through BHSSA funding, and 5 were through local district funds. So they were hired through ICOE, and we would use MOUs to be able to sustain them, to keep the additional 5. Grant year 2, we added another through local district funds as well, so blended funding. So we came up to 11. Grant year 3, this was our highest number. We're so proud of this, 16 school-based mental health specialists. So 5 continue to be under BHSSA, and 11 were through local district funds. And grant year 4, ending our grant term, grant year 4, we ended up with 5, and only because one of our specialists was out on leave. She had a baby, and so she was attending to family. But it was something that we put a placeholder for her whenever she was ready to come back. But we know life happens, and so we ended up with 15 school-based mental health specialists grant year 4. So we were super excited about this. What an amazing journey from 5 to 15 at the end of grant year 4, through blended funding. So we were super excited. And now program year 5. So we're thinking of now starting as of August 2025. So this current school year, and now it's going to be extended through June 2027. We have 13 school-based mental health specialists sustained through local funding only. So as BHSSA funds, we are ending BHSSA funds. We look forward to keeping 13 school-based mental health specialists in Imperial County. So we are so excited. It is such an amazing journey that BHSA and this initiative started, and how we are now looking forward. But again, nothing is we haven't done this alone. It's definitely through our partnerships, the importance of our partnerships, working with our behavioral health and our district partners, and of course the amazing leadership within ICOE. So Miriam and Denise have done amazing, and so this is just an outcome of that. And of course, our therapists, they are super talented, super skilled, and having that high skill set on the ground makes an impact. And so let's talk about what our therapists, our specialists have been doing. Our therapists, what we are seeing now, and has been the trend since the last 4 years. We've been keeping data for the last 4 years on the diagnosis for the high intensive care services that our students, the high acuity students that we are seeing. And this order of diagnosis has been consistent. And it's been, of course, after COVID, we've been seeing a lot of anxiety disorders, a lot of social phobias, generalized anxiety, panic attacks. And the second one has been depressive disorders with suicidal ideation, self-harming behaviors. And then we've seen neurodevelopmental disorders with ADHD, autism. And then fourth is trauma, stressor-related disorders. And lastly, disruptive impulsive control and conduct disorders. So we are seeing a lot more behavioral disorders coming forward, and our district partners and site admin have been identifying these symptoms earlier on as well, to making these referrals to our school-based mental health specialists for intervention. And so we are so excited that because these disorders, these diagnoses and disorders are definitely impairing academic performances and impairing their social relationships and family relationships. And so we are now on the ground and in their environment at school to be able to intervene early on, and also link them to the necessary services. So we are because we are school-based mental health specialists that are on at the school ground, we are providing that individual therapy, check-ins, coping skills, crisis interventions as needed. So we have our professionals on the ground. However, for those the high intensive level of care that is required, we are making those referrals with our partners and working alongside. So we have one BHSA liaison that is funded through BHSA funds and is employed through behavioral health. That is our referral person. So it's our main contact from our specialist to our BHSA liaison with behavioral health, and they automatically and fastly link any student to behavioral health services. It's very seamless. It's very fast, and also that they are our link to be able to coordinate with the treatment team from behavioral health to continue supporting on the ground and on campuses. So this is just a number from an unduplicated number from last school year. 1,721 students were served for Tier 3 services with our school-based mental health specialists. Out of the 1,721, this has been like the consistent trend so far that we've been seeing the last 4 years as well, is about 72% continue solely under our school-based mental health specialists, receiving services with our specialists, and 28% require that additional level, so that extra layer of support with behavioral health. And I really want to emphasize here that our specialists continue serving all students across their campuses. And so the 28%, they are still receiving support from our specialists. So they do collaborate with behavioral health treatment team to be able to support and remind them of the skills that are being learned through their behavioral health treatment on campus. So, but 28 are receiving that additional layer of intensive care, higher level of care coordination services through behavioral health. And so this is just amazing to see. So we do value our partners, we value our staff, and they are very diligent in being able to assess, recognize, and be able to make that referral right away.
Thank you, Stephanie. And so what's our vision? Where are we going? Yeah, we're very much sustaining our vision. You know, we're still committed. We don't call it a grant now. We call it a program. We're really, really truly working together. It's not, it's not easy and it's not perfect, but we're in there. We're playing in the sandbox together. We're working together with high school staff to ensure students are receiving fast, timely, high quality, culturally competent, mental health services on campus. We're facilitating a more seamless connection to off-campus support through Imperial County Behavioral Health when higher support is needed, like Stephanie described. That's us. That's our team, and we are ensuring that there is an emphasis on all students have that timely, equitable access to mental health services in all of our high schools. That means 21 of them, 21 high schools. We're starting to go down to middle schools now, but our high schools were in trouble 5 years ago and prior, so we had to really triage our high schools, and we're in there. We're very much in there, and of course, all of this to say that the investment in highly trained licensed therapists are significantly improving lives in Imperial County for our students and their families. And those are the people that you see in front of you. They have been consistent. I know who are the 5 that started and how we added on and added on and added on, and they've stayed with us. That team of school-based mental health specialists, they've been with us throughout. We have really retained our team, grown our team, and yeah, we're very, very connected to our group. They mean everything to us. Next slide. Yeah, serving with purpose. And I'll turn it over. I don't know. I'll turn it over to Stephanie for a success story.
Yeah, and bringing it to life as well. One of the things that we didn't mention here is that with our team of specialists that Miriam and I meet with them weekly. We have a 3-hour check-in with them where we do a lot of case consultation. We do skill training. We bring in other trainers from the communities if there is a modality or there's something that's needed to be able to enhance their skill set. And we do a lot of consultation. So a lot of the story that we're going to share with you today is really something that was in the making. Of course, it took time, it took months, it took a lot of rapport building from our specialists, but this is something also that we share with our consortium members, and we have our specialists ready to share a success story with their site admin too. So anytime that's like our elevator pitch, how we've been discussing here with at BHSSA, in our meetings, our specialists are also equipped to really share the impact that they are making on campus to our communities, because how we tell the story and how we share data is vital to our sustainability, right? And so we want to share with you from our school-based mental health specialist. All right. Stephanie Valenzuela, she's a licensed clinical social worker, and she's placed at one of our super intensive high schools here, Central Union High School. And so this was just from a reporting. So every month they provide a success story to we have monthly summaries that they submit. And from those we pick out, we share. Sometimes it's difficult to share, pick one success story for our CBH partners. To showcase the impact of Imperial County. But this is one that has been shared before with our consortium, and we want to share with you today. So it says, a 15-year-old female student was referred to school-based mental health services by the school counselor and administration due to multiple daily crises on campus, which were disrupting her overall functioning. The student had been utilizing the counselor of the day service daily and visiting the nurse during multiple class periods. The student presented with passive suicidal ideation and was engaging in self-harm at home and school. She also had strained relationships with peers, family, and teachers. The student carries a diagnosis of major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and presents with symptoms of borderline personality disorder, although an official diagnosis of BPD had not been made due to her age. The student is very artistic and prides herself on having a great sense of humor. She shares that her symptoms began in 7th grade when she started having thoughts of ending her life due to multiple strained relationships. The student shares that she began engaging in self-injurious behaviors to cope. She felt like nobody understood her or her challenges. She was reluctant to meet with me due to negative therapy experiences in the past. As a result, establishing rapport with the student was the most important step for engagement in school-based mental health services. Therefore, our rapport building consisted of spending time together, getting to know each other, going on walks on campus, and coloring. I also collaborated with the school counselor and nurse who already had a relationship with the student and became part of her crisis team. This is one of the amazing benefits of being a school-based therapist, the ability to engage students in their environment and on their terms. It became easy to establish a therapeutic connection with the student without having to abide by any time constraints or insurance requirements. Initially, our meetings were short, and eventually, after gaining her trust, she was finally able to open and engage in individual therapy. She shared that things had gotten really bad at school, home, and with peers. She was breaking down at school every day. Most of her friends had blocked her on social media and due to her frequent meltdowns, which occurred sometimes in the middle of the night. Her mental health was significantly impacting her ability to function, which led to low grades, low attendance, and poor relationships with family and friends. It was important for me to empower the student to take control over her own mental health and her recovery instead of focusing on external stressors and depending on school staff and friends to help her regulate her emotions. We utilized dialectical behavioral therapy and evidence-based treatment modality to focus on improving emotional regulation skills as well as communication skills. We also focus on implementing healthy coping skills to reduce self-harm. The student began to really focus on her love for art and drawing, and this became a very positive force in her treatment and healing. I recently referred the student to Imperial County Behavioral Health Services to receive additional support and a full evaluation by a psychiatrist. I consider this a success story because the student has not had any crisis at school this month, has not engaged in self-injurious behaviors in the past 6 weeks. I also think that her accepting a referral to a higher level of care through behavioral health was significant success because initially she was very distrusting of mental health providers and treatment. School-based mental health services helped break the stigma she had surrounding mental health services, and she is now connected to a higher level of care, which I do not think would have been possible had services not been available on her campus. The student has also been able to maintain appropriate boundaries with peers and recently made new friends after joining the Positivity Club on campus, a club focused on animals. Recently, she shared that she has completed a beautiful notebook full of drawings and song lyrics that she has written to cope. The student has not visited the counselor of the day or the nurse. Her grades have improved and so has her attendance. She shares that she continues to work on her relationship with her family. And overall, I think this is a student success story is a great example of how school-based mental health services help with stigma reduction, accessibility, and early intervention. Yay. So we're just really excited about this amazing stuff. And we're hearing a lot of this after 4 years. We're seeing a lot more of these stories come up. And that was definitely the message from the beginning that we have to give ourselves grace when we initiate a program. We might not see the results right away. And now, after 4 years, even our superintendents are seeing higher test scores, higher attendance rates, and lower truancy. So we are just excited about that as well. So our district partners are also seeing that impact.
Thank you so much for giving us this time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, is this for me? Sorry. And I guess and here we just want to do a little question. What's emerging here for us? Are we making any new connections with this? With just the information that was shared, we really want to open it up to you all. If you have any questions, any thoughts.
We saw a lot happening in the chat, but we'd love to hear someone unmute. What new connections are we making?
Miriam and Stephanie, I'm so excited to hear about everything your program's doing, and I'm curious if you can share at all what kind of local funding is being used to sustain.
Yeah, what the school districts are using, right? I don't know exactly. I don't know. I don't know. We've heard a variety of things. We've heard these are all MOUs, right? And so I don't ask what they're using and how they're making this happen. They just are. The inkling that we're getting from our superintendents is that they're using funds that are not yet, that are just kind of kicking the road down the street a little bit to get to things more permanent, like LCAP, right, or LCFF, right? So they're using anything. I don't think, I think it depends by the district. I don't think that they're using like permanent funds yet. They're working towards that, right? So that it is always going to be funded. It's just, we have one school district, Imperial Unified School District. We are, they recently, this 5th year of our program, they broke away from ICOE, not the consortium, but they hired our school-based mental health specialists, licensed therapists, 2 of them, as their district faculty. They said, we've got them. They're not going away. That's the same mentality and behavior that they're doing with MOUs as well. So I'm getting a lot more curious to see what types of their community schools and a bunch of different things to just sustain so that they can make them permanent. I don't know, Ali, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's
And
great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to jump in just a little because that is the next steps. I know Miriam did mention there is a lot of blended funding that's going on right now within the district. So they are using multiple funding sources that they have to be able to sustain for now. So as of right now, they were able to find enough for the next 2 years, but they're looking for something more permanent. So it is other like overflow of other funding sources to be able to complete the salaries of our school-based mental health specialists to keep them. But those are the conversations, and that's where we're headed at for what's going to happen after 2027 and long term, because they've communicated that they don't want to do MOU renewals every 2 years and then try to figure out where the new funding is going to come and how they're going to fund our specialists. They want permanent funding. So that is definitely in those conversations. And once we start hearing, and we'll compile a list as well, and we'll start sharing with everybody. And so we're excited to hear more. And we're in the making. We're still learning and we're still growing. So we'll definitely share that information once we have that.
Because that could aid you in conversations to identify possible funding sources. But those 2-year MOUs, that was a brilliant breakthrough. I do MOUs with many programs and grants in my department, but we insisted, the consortium insisted, we're going to establish 2-year MOUs is not frequent, but one thing to really embed sustainability early on was we're going to sign a 2-year agreement. We're going to sign a 2-year agreement. And that was unusual in and of itself. And so we are agreed, we are funded for the next 2 years while we continue to have those sustainability discussions throughout for the subsequent 2 years. So all strategic.
So many kudos in the chat for you as well. Thank you so much, Miriam and Stephanie. I think what's staying with me and what I'll add is from Tehama to Placer to Imperial, the importance of telling your story, giving value to everything that's being done and what folks are doing. I think, Christina, you said it where people are magic. Your people are magic. They're the secret sauce, right? And that's what we have to keep talking about. And then the wonderful success that you're having in Imperial, my goodness. That is wonderful to have local funding sustaining 13 positions. Amazing. Thank you. Sure.
I
Go
was
ahead,
just going
Sarah.
to jump in there and say one of the things that I appreciate in that is like the way in which you have told your story. And because of that, like when you are looking for local funding, I mean, all LEAs receive dollars, right? And so superintendents and school boards that help make decisions are looking for information in order to determine how to allocate those resources, right? And so the fact that you have that support is really evident of the way in which you've provided the service, but your testimonials and your data throughout that has to be the proof, right? It's the evidence of the great work that you're doing, which makes it much easier when for me, when I'm having to make a decision around where I'm going to, where I have this much of the pie, right? How I'm going to slice it up. And so I think that's a really great example for all of us of the continuing to remember why that data collection component and that storytelling and having all of those both quantifiable and qualitative that just really merge and strengthen it help when it comes down to sustainability for dollars, especially those local resources. So thank you guys so much for pulling that all together for us.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Okay, with that, we are going to, unfortunately or fortunately, we are wrapping for this series. We want to be able to, we've already kind of reflected on where we've been, where we are. You've heard amazing examples of just the power in teams and in the storytelling and where some of our teams are today. Just incredible. We're not going to break out into groups. We're cognizant too of the time. But what we want to do is to kind of bring this together because I think where many of us might be sitting is, how did you do this? What were you thinking when you were saying, let's go and tell this person or this group our story? We want to get to the how. And so very quickly, just going to spend some time in reflection with this group right here. And we're going to start with an activity that you can take back to your teams as well. It looks like a SWOT and that's kind of intentional, but it's not. It's kind of a more relevant way of really spending some time to reflect, to question, so that we can, again, continue to move forward as we sunset and begin anew. First section is intentions. Thinking about, reminding, coming back to our values and the people that we want to be able to serve. Two, on the right there, at the top right, is concerns. Many of you heard the challenges that came up for our TCT teams throughout this process, right? Many of you are thinking about potholes and pitfalls. Well, we've always done it this way. And so that in and of itself, that rigidity trap from the eco cycle, always doing the things the same way, is in itself a challenge or a pothole and pitfall. Three are boundaries, right? And what is it that you're going to need to feel efficacious and supported in this work? What do we need to say no to? It's a lot like the creative destruction process and thought process there of what do we need to say no to, say yes to, preserve. And then the four, where we want to make sure we talk about is what comes next, the leadership vision, right? How will you know that what you have envisioned has come true? What will it say about if we were looking at your program or project a year from now? How will you feel? Where will you be? The theme here has always been about data. In thinking about all the things you've heard in the series, has your data or the data that you wish to collect changed? Maybe the process has changed. So I'd love to ask and begin here with number one, intentions. For whom, and you can put this in the chat or unmute, but who are you leading, right? For whom are you leading and what are your values? You can answer one or both of those questions about intentions. The who and your values. Why? That's pretty much what we're asking here is your why. What is your why? What are your intentions? You can feel free to answer one or both. but feel free to unmute or in the chat. What are your intentions? Thank you, Kelly. Work on connecting our school-based collaborative to our public health department. Absolutely. For BHSSA funding, support their youth academies. Absolutely. Within the youth academies, I know that this is something that you have brought up before, the importance of it, right? The peers, kiddos and families, always. We hear that through the stories, through the sharing that you do. Absolutely. I don't think you're the only one, Martha. They deserve those advocates for sure. And leading for the students and families in the communities. Absolutely. Okay. The second one, the orange box there, concerns. What worries have you had, right? What worries you about leading through the sunset? Where are your potholes and pitfalls? List your concerns. Perhaps it's, again, not knowing. I think for many of us, if not all, folks have questions about where funding is going to come from. They worry about being able to tell the stories or being able to be in the spaces. What are your concerns? Let's put a couple in the chat or unmute. Anything at all. What are those concerns that you have? Worries, potholes, pitfalls. Thanks, Chanel. Yeah. It's hard to let go of things, especially when you all have built them. So to part with that, to rebuild, that in and of itself is a process and one that isn't easy. Um, okay. Where new funding will come from. Training interventions that were identified for this project are costly. How do we bring those and continue to support our staff? Funding continues to come up, reduce staffing, all the staffing changes. Absolutely. Partner vision shifting and focusing attention away from mental health. That's heartbreaking, which is why our data. Absolutely. I love that you come with a solution in that we're pushing that data, that story to make sure we're intentional about telling it, giving all of that information out. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. Number 3 is boundaries. What do you need to feel supported in the work? It might just be one word. What is it that you need to be supported? Maybe it's each other. Maybe it's connecting with somebody who's shared their practice profile. Maybe it's someone who's shared their story of getting local funding or how they've absolutely changed the culture with data storytelling. What do you need? Anything at all. I know we're stealing maybe another minute. Promise we will wrap. But anything at all you need. What are your boundaries? Keep bringing people together. Absolutely. The collaboration came up multiple times early on. We need that. Absolutely. For when you can't think about it, I know we can't think about it in the spot. If we need to think about it later, TA request portal and link are in the chat. My final question for you, in one word, what are your dreams? So there's 3 questions there. Could just be one word. How, if your leadership vision comes alive, what will be true? How will you feel? Where will you be? What data will change? What is one dream and or how do you know it's working? We wish you all in this shift, health, wealth, and all the wonderful things of rebirth.